If you've been around here, you know how we typically do it. This is the moment in the gathering where we open up the Word of God and read a passage. We've been moving together through the book of 1 John in the New Testament and really just taking it like a paragraph at a time, reading the scripture, praying, and then talking through it verse by verse, trying to understand what the Word says about who God is, what it is to know Him, and then applying it to our lives. That's a great thing to do. Arguably my favorite thing to do in a gathering like this, to preach the Word of God and to apply it to our lives. But every now and again, a couple times a year, we shift the way we do things here and lean more heavily on a testimony. Someone standing up to saying, let me tell you how these truths have impacted my decisions in life. Let me tell you what the grace of God available in Jesus Christ that we talk about here has done for me. And this is one of those Sundays. We've done it with baptism. Some of you have been here at baptism gatherings where we put the water up here and people tell the story of how the grace of God has changed their life and we baptize them. Other times we have interviews like today. And there's something beautiful about that. I think it's one of the gracious things God does for us in His Word, that as you read it, so much of the inspired Word is testimony, the story of how men like Abraham and Moses, women like Mary trusted God, and we see how He fills their life with meaning as they walk by faith in Him. And so there's a place to see how the grace of God works out in somebody else's life to inspire our own life. I think about the book of Acts in the New Testament. Contains many sermons as the church was being born. And yet 3 times in a single book of Acts, we hear the testimony of the Apostle Paul. I mean, Luke will summarize some of Peter's sermons. The Apostle Peter, Luke will cut him off and go like, and he said many other things like this. But when it came to the testimony of Paul, he includes it 3 times. It's helpful to hear how God has touched down in our stories. And so today is a day of testimony. Right? Now, Paul, who I just mentioned, wrote to the Philippians, and in it, there's something powerful he says. After listing his accolades, things that he's accomplished that would be seen as valuable in the culture of his day, he told them in Philippians chapter 3, he says, but I count everything, all these things, as loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. He said, there's things I've been a part of that have value, and yet compared to knowing Jesus Christ, these are loss. He's a better thing. And then he goes on and says, one thing I do, forgetting what lays behind. And he uses athletic imagery and straining for what's ahead. He said, I press on to it for the goal of the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. He said, my life now is chasing after the Jesus who came chasing after me. And then he says something really fascinating, and this is why I bring this up. And a few verses later in that same passage, in Philippians 3:17, he says, brothers, join in imitating me. He unapologetically says, hey, be like me. I'm chasing after Jesus because He came to get me. Join me in the race. But then he goes on and he says, join in imitating me and keep your eyes on those who walk according to the example you have in us. I love that because keep your eyes, in Greek, the language this was originally written in, it's the word skopeo. It's where we get scope. So he's not just saying notice. He says, hey, when you're in a gathering of believers, scope out those who are walking according to the pattern you saw in us and imitate their faith. He says there's a place to look at how other people have walked with God to inspire and equip you in your own walk with God. And that's why we're doing what we're going to do today. We're going to have a little interview and have a testimony, right? Now, in case you don't know who I'm about to interview, let me say this. In 1891, he was not on the scene yet, but this is a setup. In 1891, there was a Canadian seminary graduate and PE teacher named James Naismith who worked at the YMCA in Springfield, Massachusetts. And he was tasked to create a new indoor sport to keep young men from fighting during the winter. That's how things went back in the 1800s, right? And so he nailed a peach basket to the wall and came up with 13 rules and created a game called basketball. Not primarily as a tool of entertainment, but as a tool of discipleship, as someone who wanted people to know God and what it is to walk with Him. Now, fast forward around 120 years later, and a group of dudes took basketball to a whole other level. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, watch this, and I'll introduce our guest. right, Passion City Church, will you welcome Dude Perfect Zone, Coby Cotton, everybody.
Hey, guys. Wow, what is up? The peach basket. That's a nice touch, Ben. I like that. I like that. I've never been introduced with the peach basket.
Did they put the photo? I got photos of the guy.
I believe that.
Put him on a shirt.
I believe that. I have a couple early takeaways. First of all, I do think for a while, at least, I'm out on river rafting. I think I'm going to need to give that a break for a while. Amazing story for Nate. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Also, fashion-wise, I am feeling behind. We've got these barrel jeans over here. John's rocking like the super skinny black jeans tucked into his boots.
Yep.
Swaggy Kenny's over there in like his high waters, his little flat brim hat with like tiny little words you can't read. So these are just jeans. Yeah. And I do feel behind up here.
Well, that's why I try to balance them out by just having a uniform.
I
have nothing interesting going on. I see the trends, and then I check my age and go, I think I'm out. I have a lane, and I stay in it.
That's smart. Learning.
Well, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for coming to D.C. and bringing the family. Y'all were kicking around D.C. yesterday?
Yes, the whole fam is here. My wife is here. My parents, my sister. We've got the whole squad. We are full tourist mode. Like we are hitting the cherry blossoms. Yes. We are going full cherry blossom today. So we are going to do that.
It's awesome. Well, man, it's just been fun to see you guys up here and just glad to have you up here. And there's a lot of, Dude Perfect questions we're going to get to and some other things. But before we get into the story of what you guys have created, this media behemoth, I don't know what you call it. Let's back up before the genesis of Dude Perfect and go to the genesis of Coby. Can you tell us a little about your early life, faith journey? Give us a little window into that.
Yep. Honor where it's due. I said my parents are here. I know this is not everybody's story, but I have unbelievable parents. They've been in the ministry their entire lives. So grateful for them. I say that to say I was born and raised in a family that taught us about Jesus. My parents met through Campus Crusade, which is now Cru. They were on staff there for a long time. And then my dad took a job at a local church in the Woodlands, which is near Houston. And that was where I grew up. And I was raised there in church all the time, not dissimilar to your kids, just all the time in that space. And I remember I was 7 when I first accepted Jesus. But for me, 5th grade was when it really became much more personal for me. My family was sitting around watching the Disney Channel original movie Smart House. And I remember that it marked me because I started feeling this really terrible pain in my side. And I told my mom, like, this really hurts. And she's like, you're fine. 2 days later, she's still like, you're fine. I'm like, I'm not. Go to the doctor and it's appendicitis. And I was sidelined for my very important 5th grade basketball season that year. And for me, I remember that year for the first time, like really having a quiet time. And I had watched my dad. I would walk down the stairs and there's these little doors with glass and my dad would be sitting at his desk every morning of my life reading his Bible. And that was the first year for me that was a more personal thing. And it took appendicitis, I think, to get me there. Yes. Fast forward a little bit further and I'm in high school in the Woodlands. And on Tuesday nights, my brother and I would go to this thing, Tuesday nights once a month, we'd go to this thing at this local church where all these youth groups would meet up called Fresh Vibe. And this guy named Ben Stewart was the teacher. And this girl was leading worship with blue hair named Donna. And it was very impactful, as I've told you many times. So that was a huge piece of my growth at that time.
Well, it was impactful for both of us. That's where I met Donna. So we were... That's where our marriage began. Our dating began in that moment, and my speaking began. It was a lot of firsts.
I think the kids in the crowd could see the spark between you two.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I was trying to hide it, but sure.
No, we caught it. Yeah.
I love that. So, all right. So, high school, and then give us the beginnings of Dude Perfect. You met these guys, and what started as a hobby became a force globally at this point with 18 plus billion views of what you guys are up to. But take us to the beginning of how that started, meeting these guys, how y'all got this whole thing kicked off.
Like most exceptional things in the world, it began at Texas A&M. That was where we were students our junior year. Tyler and Garrett are in the backyard. If you don't know who those two guys are, just roll with me. Tyler and Garrett are back there, and Garrett, Ty says, hey, Garrett, I'll bet you a Jimmy John sandwich that I can make a hook shot from behind this tree. And he nails it. And so then he goes to Jimmy John's, collects on a sandwich, comes back and decides, hey, we need to film this so we can show the guys that were at class, because some of us actually still went to class. And when we got back, of course, we're trying to one-up each other. We went and shot off the roof. We put the basketball goal in the back of the truck. Our neighbor lady across the street called the cops. She thought it was a little reckless. I understand where she's coming from. But we put together a video on this new thing called YouTube and threw it up just for fun. And we still do not know how, but the next morning at 5:30, my brother wakes up to a call from Good Morning America, and they wanted to show it that morning. And so we assumed that was it. Like, the boom, that's the moment. And for whatever reason, people just kept watching, keep reaching out. We started making a few more videos and came back the next fall as seniors. And Tyler and I are driving down campus, and he looks up at the football stadium. He's like, Coby, I think that I could throw a basketball from the third deck all the way down to the football field and make a basketball shot. And I'm like, oh, first of all, I don't know. And he's like, you're the communication major. Why don't you reach out to A&M and see if they'll let us go in there? You know, we made that video. They probably like us. And I'm like, I don't know, Ty. That feels like a far stretch, but yes, I will do it. So I search for all the email addresses, shoot them out, and somebody writes back with the effect of, we will give you a key to the stadium for the day. And I'm like, Ty, huh? Who delivered? Your turn. So he goes in there and he makes the shot. And that was the first video that really took off. And that one was kind of like a different level of buzz.
I'm shaking my head because we did Breakaway in Kyle Field, but they did not give us the keys. It took a lot longer to be able to host a Bible study there. I guess you're nicer than me. I don't know.
No idea. I think our ask was a little simpler.
You're so disarming. Your dad, I want to say, told me around that time about the way y'all did it, the fact that y'all only had a handful of basketballs. Like this was the scrappy beginnings.
In hindsight, I would have brought more than 4 basketballs to a football stadium. Honestly, the 4 basketballs was a problem. The biggest problem was the guy that we had helping us rebound on the second deck. I'm just going to be straight up honest, and we've told this guy to his face. He did not have what it takes to throw the basketball from the second deck to the third deck.
Back up the top.
And it would hit this giant home of the 12th man tin sign, so it would clank right off the sign 2 feet away from where it needed to be and bounce all the way back down to the field. And so he really stretched that experience for us, time-wise.
All right, so then it goes viral, as they say. You guys are blowing up.
As they say.
And you start making video after video and of all kinds of creative insanity. I mean, we could ask so many questions about what y'all have done there, but maybe just give us one, like, what was one of the ones that you're like, this was a great idea. I'm so glad we did this. Or maybe one that you're like, this one maybe wasn't such a great idea.
There were plenty of the bad ideas, for sure. Okay. One that comes to mind that was just memorable. So we made those first early videos. Companies started reaching out, wanting to be featured in them. Of course, we did not know that was a thing. We were grateful for that as college kids scraping it together. And GMC was the first company that said, hey, look, if you could do anything, what would you do? And in true Tyler fashion, he's like, we want to make a shot out of an airplane. I'm like, we do? And they're like, great. I did not expect that. So a couple weeks later, we are in Austin at this big, giant open field, huge tent. Feels like South by Southwest. There's 100 cars out there. I don't understand why. Till we show up, we get inside the tent, everybody starts cheering. And we're like, oh no, they're here for us. Like, huge film crew, trucks parked down by the basketball goal. It's got like one of one decal on it. It's the only new heavy duty GMC truck. They're like, you can drop the basketballs out of the airplane, but don't hit the truck. And you're like, well, it's really close to the basketball goal. So I don't know, no promises. We're gonna do our best. We just started this like 2 weeks ago. So Ty goes up in the airplane, and we're feeling so optimistic. I mean, the guys are just jazzed. We're down there like, he's gonna do it. And he circles around and he drops the ball, and it just keeps falling and falling, and it goes past the goal, and it's like 400 yards past the goal, and it just barely misses a cow out in this pasture. And we are like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, these people have to be thinking, like, pack it up, ship it home. And so Ty's on walkie-talkie as they're circling around. He's like, that was bad, wasn't it? We're like, it was really bad, Ty. And he's like, what should I do differently? We're like, I don't know, dude. We're so dejected. We're like, I guess just drop it sooner. So he circles back around in the airplane. 3, 2, 1, drops it, drains it on the second try. And now Ty would love to tell you that he is 50% from the air. Like that's his shooting percentage. And so he will never do it again because that's locked in at this point. So that was the luckiest
The legend
shot
was
of all
born.
time.
Yeah.
The legend of Tyler Toney was born for sure.
We ask our kids that whenever I find a parking spot, that's some of the most magnificent stuff I do here in town.
That's pretty cool.
I go, what's that called, kids? And then from the back, they go, favor.
Favor.
And so that's, you're like, okay.
I can see Owen saying
God had a plan. God had a plan.
That's great.
Tell us about, I want to move on to some of your faith journey too, but before we do, I want to, and this may have some faith involved. It started, basketball shots in the backyard, starts to escalate. At one point gets to you in space. So can you just give us a second about what it was like to not be on planet Earth or in the air, but actually in space?
I want to be clear and on the record here. I did not bring it up. The guys really give me a hard time about this. I did not bring up the space question. Thank you, Ben.
That was mine.
Okay, for the record.
It wasn't in the first gathering either.
Gosh, well done. Well done. That was the thing that happened. It was absolutely nuts. 4-ish years ago now, our company gets an email. Our brand guy ignores the email. Hey, somebody on Dude Perfect, we want them to go to space. He's like, that's spam. He ignores another email. He gets a phone call, ignores the phone call, finally mentions it to us. And we're like, you might should run it down and make sure, because that would be cool. Finds out it's a real offer. They wanted somebody on Dude Perfect to go on the Blue Origin space flight. And so, as one does, we decided that we would choose who that person is by using our model rocket battle series. And whoever's model rocket, which to be totally fair, you're picturing this, that's where it started. They were huge. It's probably the top of that screen. It's big, because we had such cool model rockets, and we go out to the field and we're filming this day. I don't think I even told my wife what we were filming that day. We just show up, and if anybody has watched the videos before, you know that Coby, do not have a history of winning these battles. So I am not worried in the least about being the one to win and now be faced with this decision to go to space. And lo and behold, my rocket just has the performance of a lifetime. And she just soars. And when it went, I was like, I think it's gonna be me. And by the end of the day, I was the winner, and I called my wife, and I was like, hey, honey, remember that thing we were filming today? I'm not sure I told you much about it, but I was the winner, and actually I'm supposed to go to space now, so we should probably talk about this over dinner. So anyways, that was, I give my wife all the credit for saying yes. We had a 1-year-old, very iffy in my mind. God's hand in it. I remember thinking, who in the world do I call to ask, is this a wise idea to say yes to this? Y'all, this room probably has a lot more people that would know that answer than most. But we had, at the Masters the year before, we had met Shane McAuliffe. And he, that's not his last name.
Kimbrough.
Shane Kimbrough, thank you. Shane McAuliffe is local news in College Station. Yep.
And he is thrilled.
Shane McAuliffe does not have a ton of information about space travel. Shane Kimbrough, on the other hand, is a real astronaut, and I had met him, and I texted him, and I said, Shane, please, can I call you? I do not know who to ask. And it was really cool talking to him, and his rocket, I was like, how could I have any confidence? And his rocket had been tested the exact same amount of times as mine had before I had the chance to say yes. And that was just one of the things that gave me a little bit of peace about the idea, but it was incredible. It was unbelievable. 12-minute flight. It's so legit. 2 thumbs up.
And Shane's a good dude. He's a really good guy.
Shane's great.
I'll tell you, watching that video, because we've seen all your videos many, many times at our house. One of the things that struck Donna and I actually got a little emotional about watching it was you could see all the guys are giving you a hard time during the getting ready. But as soon as it came time for you to go in space, you watch these dudes, your buddies, have a genuine concern for you. They're we want you to have this experience, but you could see they're not just yeah, hype video. They're worried about, I'm just you don't fake that. They love him. And they're thrilled when you got back. I was just this is one of the things that I think is so magical about you guys is you do these great videos. They're fun, they're entertaining, they're cool, they're great for families, they're good for kids to watch. But you don't, it's not even the scratching of the surface. You see, combined with that is real friendship, real love, real concern for one another. and you're buddies. And it's interesting because, we've all seen the documentaries about bands that it's 5 guys and then they get huge and then all the fame and blows the band apart. The ego's getting away. But you guys have managed to maintain this real sincere, genuine love for each other, even as you've managed the challenges and stresses of success. How have you guys managed to keep such a strong, forged friendship through it all?
I think that the good times, because I have my twin brother there and these other 3 friends who are now absolutely brothers, like we share all these experiences together. And so the good times are twice as good. And I do think the hard times for that same reason are twice as hard. And it's a battle. We'll do these tours where we travel around in the summer and we're actually on a tour bus together for the better part of like 5 weeks. And by the end of it, we're at each other, and that's just a tiny picture of just how this builds up over time. And I think we've just learned, especially as men, it's really hard to admit when you're wrong. And we have found that we need to put some type of kind of cadence in place where we can wipe the slate clean. And for us, we do Monday mornings, we call it Owner's Box. And yes, we talk about some business stuff, but a lot of times it's just the 5 of us sitting in a room talking about why somebody was frustrated about something or what we did wrong. And for a long time, the best we could ever say to say I'm sorry was we would say, I'll sword myself. Like, yeah, that one's on me. I'll sword myself, follow my sword. And that was a start. That's not a bad place to be. But within the last few years, we've graduated to I'm sorry. And that's difficult. But I think truly that has been huge. And we've just found that the health of the friendship is really equal to the health of our business. And if we lose that, that's bad news.
Well, and it's so powerful because that, and particularly in your place of success, your ego can get big. And so having to humble yourself is one, our pride resists it. And then 2, it feels like weakness, and weakness that can be taken advantage of. But to be in a situation where you don't have that, you lack that. We talk about this, we do, like when you see people in marriage counseling, they'll have a marriage that's really in trouble, maybe 5 years down the road, maybe 7 years down the road. And when you start to see why the issues didn't start a year ago, 6 months ago, they started year 1, where someone did something that hurt the other's feelings and they were like, it's no big deal, it's fine. And yet, in that river of love and life together, it's just like a little bit of sediment gets in a little bit of resentment gets in the river. And over time, like sediment building up in a river, it starts to block out the flow of love and life and friendship. And so for you guys to go, no, we're not gonna let that happen. We're gonna keep short accounts. Not to point the finger at each other, but to move resentment out of the way so we can move together with friendship. And that's the secret to a good marriage. That's the secret to a good friendship. And I think that is a big part of y'all's success. As you see, y'all have done the hard work behind the scenes to cultivate friendship. And particularly in a world that's very lonely, that's what I think is one of the things that's most enjoyable about watching y'all's videos is you go, these are real friends. It's also an outworking of the gospel in some ways, because that's the center of Christianity, right? Is seeing that, hey, though we're all made in the image of God and have beauty, there's something wrong with us. We're sinners. And so the invitation, we saw this in 1 John, to walk in the light, walk in honesty before God, is to confess your sin. To say, hey, Lord, I have made a mess of my life here, and it's those who confess and forsake that find mercy. And so for me, when I hear you talk about that, I go, that's such an outworking of how the gospel impacts a human life. So can you speak a little bit to that about as y'all are building this business, as you've kind of launched this career, how has faith informed some of your decision-making along this path of building Dude Perfect?
I think early on for us, the biggest thing was probably just how we were trying to be different from the other YouTube things that were out there. Early days when we made those videos in the college backyard, a bunch of beer companies and sports gambling companies were the ones reaching out trying to sponsor the videos. And I remember that we had conversations around that, but we wanted to honor God with the decisions that we were making, even in those early days. And we would have loved the paycheck. God knows we would have loved the paycheck in college. But we said no to some of those. And I think it kind of marked at an early age for us in all of this that we wanted to do it God's way. And for us early on, it was just the type of content that we were making. Then I think as we've continued on, it was kind of trying to make that decision of like, okay, kind of felt like a crossover band in music that sings a little bit of Christian stuff, but doesn't want to be like a Christian band. We were trying to process like, okay, well, how do we honor God with what we're doing, even though we're just doing basketball trick shots, bottle flips, whatever it is. And so we were towing that line of like, are we doing enough? And we would try different things. We had, in our YouTube description, it would say why we do what we do. And our approach was, okay, let's make world-class content that we can be really proud of, that we hope would stand the test of time against anything else somebody thought was well-made. And then if somebody dug in a little bit deeper to see what was behind that, they would see on that link or in other places the story behind it. And on our website, when you would click that link, it would be us saying, hey, look, we have so much fun doing this, but we believe that God gave us this platform for a reason, and our ultimate goal is to glorify Jesus. And that was just really cool. It was cool to see how many people would click that and how many follow-up conversations would come from that. And so fast forward now, as the team has grown, I think a lot of it has turned into like, how do we love on the employees? These are mostly kids straight out of college that are now editors or working, trying to prep all these big video shoots that we're doing. And I think it's been fun to, like y'all have talked about with a young staff here. And I mean, all of DC is so young. Like it's that age group. And I think it has shifted a little bit into now that we have our own families. How do we love on these people that are now part of our bigger work family and point them to Jesus in whatever, stage of life they're in?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's fascinating. So much of the scriptures, there are the stories of those who, they weren't like in vocational ministry like a me. You have like a Daniel. We studied the book of Daniel in the fall, where he's in a government position. And it was, I'm gonna be excellent at my work. I'm gonna do quality work in this organization. But he also had a fear of God that influenced his decision-making. And so whenever his work world conflicted with his allegiance to God, he's like, I'm going with him. And that was, the work world could marvel at that. That's strange. And I imagine y'all probably experience something. You're gonna leave money on the table. You're not gonna do certain things that would be clearly advantageous to you. And you go, no, we have a higher standard in a sense that's gonna shape what we do. And it can be scary, I would imagine, but then you look at the influence of that. God loves to do that. He loves to put Daniels next to the king, Esther next to the king. God loves to put people of faith in positions where they can have influence that steward it really well. And I think you guys have done that. And I respect that choice, because I think for some people, the allure of money, power, fame can get them to jettison some conviction. And for you to say, no, those things can be stewarded well, but our North Star is what's gonna honor God as we make content. And as a parent, I gotta say too, I really appreciate that, because we feel this real freedom with you guys. I mean, our kids on a Saturday morning, we say, hey, it's the Dude Perfect app. You can open it up and watch anything on there, because any other app anywhere else, I don't know what you're gonna run into, but I know with you guys, it's gonna be content that has some guidance to it that we feel confident about, that we'd want them to be like y'all. And so thank you for that. As a parent, I appreciate that, yeah.
Thank you, that's kind. I know, because you've told me how much your kids watch, and I love your kids. I'm also sorry for those families who have watched that much. It's happened more times than it has surprised me. I'll be in an airport or something, and this mom will do a full circle around to get in front of me, and she's like, I heard your voice. And I knew who it was, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Bless you for having listened to that many screams from us. I am so sorry. But that's obviously encouraging.
I hadn't thought about that. We don't have Siri, but if we did, she'd probably think you live with us.
Yeah. God, that's a great point.
Your voice
wow.
A lot of time in our home. So y'all made a choice. I mean, so your faith is undergirding, shaping some of your decision-making, but then y'all made a decision as you launched from making videos that, again, are getting hundreds of millions of views and just taking off there, it becomes a tour where you're selling out stadiums, sold out Capital One here. I mean, these crazy experiences. And in the midst of that, y'all made a decision to not just let faith inform your decision-making, but you wanted to be vocal about it. Talk a little bit about maybe what led y'all to that, how you did that, what that was like, maybe some of the fears or risks around that, but tell us about it.
Yeah, I think the tour for us, which started 5 or 6 years ago, and for those who are not familiar, we do about 24 live shows in the U.S., and they started at college arenas, and now they're at these big NBA arenas, and it's wild. And I remember showing up for the first time being like, I cannot believe people are here. And I had this real fear that it was going to be this glorified like church skit that was going to be really bad, and all these dads were going to just start like walking out. But I was really grateful to see what our team had put together, and it was amazing. It was so fun, and we've absolutely loved it. And so we did the whole first summer, and it was awesome, and we were really jazzed about it. And we come back, and Ty, about halfway through that year, came up to me and was like, hey, I feel like God is encouraging me to share my faith during tour. And all of us were like, that's awesome. And we were also like, how in the world are we going to do that? Because the show's like energy levels up here. When is this like giant drop-off moment going to happen where Ty's like, let's stop all of this and let me tell you something really deep. Yeah. And so we started talking about it. And I remember Ty called you and asked you questions about how can we do this? How can we do it well? We don't want to be gimmicky or trick people into thinking like they came here for this, but we're going to juke them and give them this. Yeah. And where we landed was, we would do the show, and Ty would go out and tell everybody the show's officially over. We're so grateful for you guys being here. That means the world to us. I'm going to go grab a quick drink of water, but I'm going to come back out. And for anybody who wants to stick around, there's something really important that I would love to share with you guys about what's most important to me. And as we started doing that, and Ty would share that, people would stick around and they would wait. And Ty would come out and he would share something difficult in his life, because I think the natural thing for anybody on stage is for everybody out there to think, oh, you have it all together. Like, you're not struggling with anything, you're on the stage. And Ty would share about how he's struggling as a dad, or this was going on in his life, and try to meet people where they are, and then explain to them that, yes, Dude Perfect has been awesome. Yes, it's been an incredible platform. We've gotten to have all these amazing experiences we can't even begin to describe, but that it hasn't held a candle to the life that he has seen in Jesus and the peace that has come from that relationship with Christ. And to me, I get emotional just thinking about it. I'm so proud of how he's handled that. And we all sit up on stage behind him as he shares that. And now, having done that for 3 or 4 more summers, it's consistently been people's thing that they're most grateful for after coming to a show. And it's just been super encouraging and really fun to see that. Yeah.
Did it feel risky at all when y'all started? Was there some fear around that?
I think so, for sure, because it's like, we're towing the line. Yes, if people dig in, they'll know we're Christians, and that's in there, but we're not really out there saying it that publicly. Yeah. And I remember the first time that his little talk, some kid in the crowd had filmed the whole thing and posted it on YouTube. And I remember being like, oh gosh, but then we've just been really grateful for how people have handled that. And the truth is, we've been upfront about that. It's just been in a different way.
Yeah.
And so it was risky, I think, in some sense, but also I remember Ty saying it. He's like, look, if we go down for this, like, that's worth it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I remember talking to y'all when you were here, because we were talking about how when y'all rolled it out in the Bible Belt, like everyone, just an eruption of applause.
It's a little different, yeah.
Yeah, and then y'all had just come back from Boston.
Pretty different in Boston. Yeah.
Not as much applause.
A lot more activity in the aisles when I think word had gotten out that like that's what's about to happen, and there was a lot more trickling up the hallways.
Which I think that the way y'all did that was right, because whatever your thing is, you don't want people to feel like they got tricked, and you definitely don't want to like trick people with Jesus. So I just think y'all did the show they came for, and then said the show's over, but we'd like to share something important to us. But you essentially gave people agency. You can leave and you have a great time, and we love you, but you can choose. And I thought that was a very loving way to treat your audience. And then also be very honest. And y'all did it in towns where there was this big eruption of applause, and then some where there was less so. And I remember y'all showing up here and asking, okay, how's it gonna be in D.C.? I was like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea what they'll do. Like, I could see it going either way. But to watch y'all see the uncertainty, to take stock of the value and say, this is worth it to us. And to watch Tyler walk out and y'all sit right there with him and say, we're brothers up here together talking about the most meaningful things in life. That's really powerful. And watching y'all do that, I just, it feels a little funny to say I was proud of y'all. That even doesn't encapsulate it. But I just thought, man, this is what I was talking about when I read that passage earlier where Paul says, scope out those who are walking according to the pattern, imitate them. And so as I think of my kids, as I think of other kids, I go, scope out the way these guys make decisions and imitate them. I really respect the way y'all made those decisions. And it's been awesome to watch. As you were increasing in fame, notoriety, opportunity, all this is escalating. What some people may not know is you continued to be involved in your church and serving there, which is wild because usually when you get money, fame, and power, that's the goal. So you ditched things that you don't need, like church, something ridiculous like that. So why did you not do that? What went wrong? Like, why did you keep serving at a church after you got all the world has to offer?
When we were living in Austin, we went to a church called the Austin Stone, and our pastor at the time was a guy named Matt Carter. And Corey and I were trying to make the decision, along with the other guys, of like, hey, this is probably 4 or 5 years into the whole deal. We're like, hey, are we going to do this full time? He was like, listen, if you guys decide to go to Dallas and jump all the way in on this is something I would encourage you with. He was friends at the time with Colt McCoy and knew some of these guys that had gone from college to the pros. And he said, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I've told these guys. He's like, I would encourage you guys, your platform's going to give you the chance to go wide, but I think you need to be able to find some way to go both deep and wide. You're going to be able to reach through Dude Perfect, a lot of people, a little bit. He was like, but for Colt, the deep for him is a Bible study that he does with his teammates on his team. Yeah. And he's like, that is something that has allowed him to have a deep impact. He was like, y'all need to find out what that is for y'all in Dallas. And so when Corey and I moved to Dallas, one of the first things we did was we went to a church, we were at Watermark, and we said, hey, youth guy, we want to do this. We want to jump in. How does that work? And we jumped in with a group of 15 to 20 sixth grade guys, and we stayed with them for 7 years until they graduated. Come on. And I remember thinking at times, this is harder than my job. It was a lot, but on the same time, it was so fun. God, we loved it. It was so amazing. And I think for me, I assumed that me pouring into them was going to really help these guys. And I think what I realized throughout it was a really good accountability for me because I would show up to small group and I would either be openly faking it and telling them, hey guys, did y'all read your Bibles this week? And did y'all, go through the stuff we've been talking about and memorize the verse we've been talking about, knowing I hadn't done it myself? Or I would be feeling, hey guys, and we'd have to be forced to be honest with them about whether or not Corey and I had been doing that ourselves that week. And it was just really awesome to walk through that season of life with them. And now they've graduated from school. A bunch of them went to A&M. That's what I'm talking about. And now I've gone to their weddings. It's amazing. Like they're real friends, and it's really cool.
That's phenomenal, man. And I just love that faithfulness. And I tell people all the time in ministry, the longer you're in, the better it gets, because you do see a lot of loss and sad things, but watching people grow over time in their faith, that's a worthwhile investment, man. And I love that you guys didn't lose sight of that, because the meaning that comes and the depth and in these kids' lives. Tell us what's up next for you guys as y'all are continuing to build what is now a media company with the most trusted programming on planet Earth. I mean, tell us what's ahead. How can we be praying for you? What's up next for Dude Perfect?
We're basically, it's been the 5 of us this whole time. And slowly over the years, we've added employees and we finally brought in somebody to do the editing and brought on help on the business side. And I've been HR forever until about 6 weeks ago. We brought in Bonnie to run HR and I gave her a big hug when she came and I was like, Bonnie, I love you. Thank you for being here. And I haven't hired anybody since. It's been amazing. And really the biggest thing for us right now is growing the team. We raised some money about a year ago and brought in like a real CEO, and we're trying to mature it a little bit. Yeah. And it is providing us a lot of really fun opportunities to do some of the stuff that we've always wanted to do. Yeah. So that's kind of on the business side, and I would certainly appreciate y'all's prayers that we're hiring the right people and fighting to keep the culture strong, and that we're not just making good content for good content's sake, but that it's because of Jesus and holding firm to that. On the fun side, the next video we have coming up is Tyler is training to ride a bull. So he was told that you need to be jockey, like horse jockey weight to ride a bull. So he has just been shedding pounds and getting his mind right to try to stay on a bull for 8 seconds. So to be clear, honey, that's Ty doing that, not me. I'm not going to do the clown thing out there running around. I'm going to leave that to somebody else. So that's one of the upcoming project.
My brother just did that. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Yeah. Well, his was all, but still, he was like, I'm going to do a rodeo. And I'm like, no, that's a bad decision at 20. You don't do that at 50.
That's wild.
Yeah. Anyway, so pray for him. Hey, so I think about you guys, and I think about the stewardship God gave y'all. You know, we're going through Esther with my kids in our kind of morning devotional, and Esther wasn't planning on being queen. It kind of came out of nowhere in the Old Testament, but Mordecai, her relative, tells her, who knows, but you weren't put in this exact moment for such a time as this. You've been given this opportunity, this location as a stewardship, and she uses it for the benefit of many, many lives in the book of Esther. It's amazing. And as I look at you guys, I go, man, who knows? The improbability of a hobby in college becoming one of the most watched YouTube channels ever, and now an app and all this other stuff. And I just look and go, but you guys have stewarded that well. As technology increases, has more of an influence in people's lives, I'm grateful that y'all hung in there with it and stayed with it, and have created an environment where parents like myself and like many that are here can say, this is a great place to send kids, where they can have fun, be entertained, and also have values represented that are good for them and will promote human flourishing. And so thank y'all for what you've offered to the world. Thank you for doing it. And we're cheering you on in life. And
thank you, Ben.
Yeah. Is there anything I want to pray for everybody? I want to pray for y'all, but is there any last thing? There's a million other things I could ask you, but any last thing you wanted to say in DC that I didn't give you a chance to?
My wife and I were just kind of beat bopping around yesterday, and I was just thinking about what a unique place this is. Like, I was laughing when y'all were making the announcement about Easter out there. If this was in Dallas and we were looking for a bigger place, it'd be like, at Easter, we're gonna be at the rec center, and it'd be like, oh, wow. And here it's like, you're gonna be at Constitution Hall. It's like, God, that's so sick. Like, you guys are in a unique place. And the truth is, y'all have very unique, specific, really cool jobs. Some of y'all are on the Hill. Some of y'all are in cybersecurity. Some of y'all are in some political adjacent role that is amazing. And when I think back for me on kind of a little bit of like a growth that I feel like I've had to walk through, I clearly remember still the first time that a middle school kid ever recognized me for Dude Perfect. My family was traveling on a road trip. We were at the Blue Bonnet Cafe, and this kid said, oh my gosh, you're Coby from Dude Perfect. I remember being like, oh, I am Coby from Dude Perfect. What's up, dude? And for me, over the next few years, I feel like it started this maybe natural, maybe not, and I'm not proud to say it, but like I put a Dude Perfect bumper sticker on my car. I remember pulling up next to people, like looking, like, are they gonna notice something about that? I remember being in crowds, and I would look for any junior high kid with Nike Elite socks, and I would like want to make eye contact with that kid and see if he knew about Dude Perfect. And that's embarrassing, but that was where I was. And I think the reality is that Dude Perfect had shifted from what I was doing to who I was, and I felt like it had like creeped into my identity. And I was thinking about that for you guys, because y'all have these amazing jobs that you work for the FBI, and anybody you tell that lives in Dallas is like, no way, that's so sick. And y'all are walking in rooms and you're flashing your badges and hoping that people notice that that's who you are, and that's why these people are with you and why you can get access to this place. And for me, I remember being challenged by others, and one day I took the Dude Perfect bumper sticker off my car. And I remember just feeling like, okay, like, God, this is what I do, but I don't want it to be who I am. Like, I want to be identified by my relationship with you, and let that be like the driving part of my life. And so I would just encourage you guys here in DC, as y'all are climbing the ladders, which are important ladders. They're very important ladders. But as you guys are doing that and chasing that and feeling all of that pressure, to just remember that that is where God has placed you, and that's your job, but it's not who you are if you know Jesus. And so that's
phenomenal, man. It's phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing that, because that's the human experience. The idols of money, pleasure, fame, power, they allure us all. But if you make that your source, then as soon as it's taken, you lose you. And that's, full circle to what Paul was talking about, where he said, I had everything that was of value in my culture, But at the end of the day, it'll all go away. It all fades. And he says, but I found the better thing because he found me. And compared to knowing Jesus, all this is a loss. There's value here, but there's a surpassing greatness to knowing him, the Son of God who came for us, loved us, lived the perfect life we could not, died the death we deserved, rose from the grave victoriously to offer us life that doesn't end, a meaning that is not subject to changing circumstances, an identity that's solid and secure, and a meaning and purpose that we can use all these stewardships to honor. But I just love that you guys are modeling that. And I would encourage any of you, if you've never put your faith in Jesus, that's what we keep talking about here. We believe he's the most important thing in life. And whether you go to this church or not, find a church, find a place, find a community where they're talking about him, explaining him. No one changed history like Jesus Christ. And he claimed to be the Son of God and that those who believe in him would have life and life eternal. So the best gift we could give you is that you would know and love and trust him.